She used to be. People weren't afraid anymore. They were curious. They were watching to see what would happen next. And none of it was about her. In the cafeteria, she sat at her usual table. But everything had changed. Monica and Emily were distant, their silence louder than words. Ryan and Tyler, still bruised, had nothing to say. No one did. The entire school seemed to be watching Danielle now, not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it. Brittany's grip on the school had vanished, and she had no one to blame but herself. Danielle hadn't fought for power. She hadn't schemed or manipulated. She had simply refused to play, and somehow that was stronger than anything Brittany had ever done. As Brittany stared down at her untouched tray, something inside her cracked. She hadn't just lost a fight. She had lost her identity, her place, her entire world. And for the first time, Brittany Sanders didn't know how to get any of it back. The story of Danielle Walker and Brittany Sanders is more than a high school rivalry. It's a mirror reflecting something deeper. That true strength doesn't come from dominating others or controlling the narrative. It comes from knowing who you are and never compromising that, no matter who tries to break you. Brittany built her empire on fear and manipulation, convinced that power meant being untouchable. For a while, she was right, until someone came along who didn't care about the throne. Danielle didn't want to rule. She didn't need to fight for attention. She simply stood her ground, spoke her truth, and walked away when the fight was beneath her. That was her power. Quiet, steady, unshakable. And it was the one thing Brittany never saw coming. In the end, this isn't just a story about power. It's about integrity, self-respect, and the kind of strength that doesn't need an audience to be real. Because sometimes the loudest victory is silence, by the same students who had once clung to her every word. And all it took was one step. One dismissal. Danielle didn't even look back. That's when Brittany snapped. She didn't think, didn't plan. Her hand flew forward, grabbing at Danielle's hair, desperate for control, for something, anything to hold on to, but she never made it. Danielle caught her wrist midair. The grip was firm, unmoving, like steel, and she still didn't turn. Her body stayed still, effortless. Brittany froze. Her breath caught. Danielle turned slowly, finally meeting her gaze, and Brittany felt that look like a weight pressing down on her chest. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Danielle leaned in, voice soft enough that only Brittany could hear. "You don't have any power over me, and you never will." Then, just like that, she let go. Brittany stumbled backward, her balance gone. Her heart thundered in her chest, her body betraying her. She crashed to the pavement, hard, right in front of everyone. Danielle didn't wait. She walked away without a second glance. This time the silence wasn't just shock, it was final. And Brittany knew it. Worse, everyone knew it. Ryan and Tyler stood awkwardly, eyes cast down. Monica and Emily didn't say a word. No whispers, no loyalty, just distance. The crowd that once orbited Brittany now looked at her with something she never expected. Pity. She hadn't just lost a fight. She'd lost everything. The next morning, Riverdale High felt different. Brittany walked the halls with her shoulders back, chin up, designer bag swinging, trying to pretend nothing had changed, but she could feel it, the shift, the pressure in the air, the whispers, and they weren't about her anymore. They were about Danielle. For years, Brittany had been the architect of social order. She decided who mattered and who didn't. She had ruled these halls without question. But now the spotlight had moved, and it hadn't just dimmed on her, it had completely disappeared. The looks she got in the hallway weren't admiration or fear. They were doubt, curiosity, like people were trying to figure out what she used to be. At lunch, she sat at her usual table. Monica and Emily were quiet, avoiding her gaze, their loyalty suddenly uncertain. Ryan and Tyler sat nearby, both still nursing bruised egos and nothing to say. No one did, because for the first time, Brittany Sanders wasn't the center of attention. Danielle was. Across the cafeteria, she sat alone, calm and composed, eating lunch as if yesterday had never happened. As if flipping the school's social order on its head was just another Tuesday. People glanced at her. Some whispered, others just stared. But Danielle didn't react. She didn't have to. Brittany watched from across the room, drowning in a silence that wasn't quiet at all. It was the sound of everything changing. From a distance, students watched Danielle, hesitant, uncertain. Some from the basketball team nodded at her in passing, a quiet show of respect. Even girls who had once ignored her now stole curious glances, drawn in by something they didn't fully understand. But Danielle didn't care. She wasn't here for validation. She wasn't chasing attention or trying to take Brittany's crown. She had done what needed to be done. And now, she was finished. That's what Brittany hated most. Danielle hadn't just won. She had moved on. No gloating, no smug grin, no thirst for the throne. Because to Danielle, the throne meant nothing. Brittany's hand clenched around her fork, knuckles white. She could fix this. She had to. She'd bounced back before. Maybe if she could spin the story, twist the narrative, make Danielle look like the villain. Maybe then she could take back control. Just as that thought took shape, a shadow fell over the table. She looked up. Her breath hitched. Danielle was standing there. She didn't sit. She didn't lower her voice. She simply stood still, composed, self-assured. "We're done," she said. "No drama, no emotion, just finality." Brittany felt the tension in her chest tighten like a vice. Eyes were on them again, watching, waiting, breathless. But this time, there was no power in the attention. Danielle's words hit like a gavel. It was over. She turned and walked away, her steps smooth and sure. Brittany didn't move. She couldn't. It was real now. Danielle had ended it, quietly, cleanly, with more power in that one dismissal than Brittany had ever wielded through fear. As the cafeteria doors shut behind her, the buzz of whispering students filled the room. Laughter, curiosity, but not about Brittany. She could feel it all slipping through her fingers. The control, the image, the illusion. She had built an empire on fear and dominance, years of careful social maneuvering, and in less than a week, Danielle had dismantled it without even trying to take it. The next day, Riverdale High felt like a different place. Brittany walked the halls the way she always had. Shoulders back, chin up, designer bag swinging like armor. But it was just a performance. Inside, she was unraveling. Every hallway was a minefield of stares and whispers. She wasn't the force. Stretched under a dimming sky, the air buzzing with anticipation. They were already there. Brittany stood dead center, arms crossed, smirk locked in place. Monica and Emily flanked her like shadows. Chase and Tyler were a little too close, radiating threat without saying a word. But what wasn't supposed to happen, what Brittany didn't expect, was the crowd. Word had spread faster than she planned. At least 20 students had shown up, circling the space loosely, phones raised, whispers thick in the air. Danielle didn't flinch. She moved steadily, her steps measured, stopping just a few feet from Brittany. Her gaze didn't waver. Brittany tilted her head, lips curling. "Wow, you actually showed. I figured you'd run again, like yesterday." Danielle didn't blink. Her voice was low, calm. "I wasn't running," Brittany scoffed. "Please, you didn't even try to stand up for yourself." Danielle tilted her head slightly, almost as if the entire situation bored her. You think throwing food counts as a fight? Brittany's smile twitched. She didn't like how calm Danielle was, how untouched she looked. Oh, don't worry, Brittany said sweetly, stepping closer. I planned to make it real, but Danielle spoke again, and this time, everything froze. I'm here to warn you, Brittany blinked, caught off guard. Warn me. Behind her, Chase and Tyler exchanged glances. Monica and Emily looked uneasy. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You don't want to do this? Brittany laughed, but the sound rang hollow. There was a flicker in her eyes, a sharp edge of doubt. Danielle wasn't scared, not even close, and that unsettled her. That's adorable, Brittany mocked. The new girl's threatening me. Danielle's voice stayed cool. Not a threat, a warning. Brittany hesitated. Just for a second, Ryan, sensing the hesitation, stepped forward and cracked his knuckles. You done talking, or are we starting this? It was Brittany's out. She didn't have to go further, but she chose pride over instinct. You heard her, Rye, she said smugly. Show her how wrong she is. Ryan rolled his shoulders, stepping up to Danielle. He was massive, easily 6 inches taller, built like a tank. Don't worry, he said mockingly. I'll go easy on you. Danielle didn't reply. And then he swung. In a blur, Danielle moved. She stepped into his swing, caught his wrist mid-punch, and twisted. Using his momentum, she flipped him over her shoulder in a clean, practiced motion. Slam! Ryan hit the pavement hard, air whooshing out of his lungs as he crashed to the ground. The crowd gasped. Brittany's stomach dropped. Ryan lay stunned, coughing, disbelief all over his face. He wasn't supposed to lose, especially not like that. Danielle stepped back, composed. Chase and Tyler stared, frozen. She had warned them. They hadn't listened. Trey hesitated, but pride got the better of him. He charged. Danielle waited. Then, with smooth precision, she sidestepped, grabbed his wrist and spun behind him, locking his arm in place. Trey let out a sharp cry, his body bending unnaturally. Danielle released him without a word, watching him stumble away, clutching his arm. The crowd, once hungry for a takedown, was silent. Brittany's chest tightened. Her pulse thundered. Danielle hadn't just defended herself. She had owned the moment. She looked at Brittany again, voice calm. Do you still think I was running? It wasn't mockery. It was disappointment. Brittany said nothing. For the first time in her life, she had no comeback. Danielle hadn't just won. She'd shattered Brittany's illusion of control. And now, Brittany finally understood what it felt like to be powerless. The crowd remained frozen, wide-eyed, silent. Their stunned expressions mirrored back at Brittany like a twisted reflection of her crumbling image. Ryan was still on the ground, gasping for air, his pride shattered. Trey stood off to the side, clutching his arm, jaw clenched, humiliated. Monica and Emily, usually smug and sneering, were now dead silent, their faces stripped of confidence. Danielle, meanwhile, hadn't moved. She didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She simply stood there, composed and unbothered, as if what had just happened had taken no effort at all. Brittany's nails dug into her palms, rage bubbling beneath her skin. But it wasn't the usual kind. This wasn't fire or power. This was fear, masked as anger. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Danielle wasn't supposed to be this strong. Her mind raced, desperate to regain control, to remind everyone who she was. Brittany Sanders, the queen bee, the rule maker, the one everyone feared. But then Danielle spoke, and her words hit harder than any punch. You thought this was about power, Danielle said, her voice calm, yet somehow louder than the whispers creeping through the crowd. But the truth is, you were never strong to begin with. The words hung in the air like a judgment. Final, unshakable. Brittany felt them sink in. Heavy, undeniable. And then Danielle turned and walked away, leaving Brittany in the wreckage of her shattered authority. She stood there, humiliated, surrounded. The laughter around them lost its sharpness, became strained. Danielle bent down, picked up her tray, and, without looking away, turned and walked. More laughter erupted, but it wasn't the same. It was hollow, uncertain. The whispers started almost immediately, riding under the noise like a current. Brittany heard them. This wasn't fear or rage in Danielle's eyes. It was something else, something that chipped away at her confidence. That night, Danielle sat at the kitchen table, untouched food in front of her, her mind replaying the scene again and again. The tray, the smirks, the laughter. Her father, Marcus Walker, stood quietly at the counter, pouring coffee. He didn't ask what was wrong. He already knew. He had seen that kind of quiet before. He set his cup down and crossed his arms. "All right, tell me." Danielle exhaled through her nose. Her voice came low, clipped. "I don't want to fight." Marcus studied her, calm but sharp. "And yet, you're thinking about it." Danielle's hands curled into fists. "I don't want to be that girl, the one who just takes it." Her voice cracked slightly. "I walked away, and somehow that made it worse." Marcus sipped his coffee. "You walked away because you didn't want to hurt them." Danielle looked up, surprised. He held her gaze. "I trained you to defend yourself, not to be a weapon. But people like that, they won't stop unless you give them a reason." His words settled heavy in her chest. She had grown up in a gym surrounded by fighters. Her father, once a pro, had trained her since she was a kid. She could predict moves before they happened. But that control came with cost. The last time she let go, a boy ended up in the hospital. It ruined everything. New city, new rules, and a silent vow never to let that part of her out again. "If I fight back," she whispered, "it won't stop. It never does." Marcus nodded slowly. "True, but walking away doesn't stop it either. If they think you're weak, they'll keep pushing." Danielle's voice was barely audible now. "So what do I do?" He leaned forward, his voice firm but steady. "You don't start fights, Danielle. But if they come for you, you finish them." Her breath caught. "You don't need to prove anything. But if they leave you no choice, you make sure they never try again." The tension in her chest finally eased. Marcus leaned back, watching her closely. "I know you," he continued. "You don't throw fists because you're angry. You move with intent. You fight to end things before they begin." Danielle nodded slowly, the words sinking in deep. She wasn't looking for trouble, but now she knew it was already looking for her. And next time, she'd be ready. That same night, Brittany couldn't sleep. She tossed in bed, the cafeteria scene looping in her mind. No matter how she twisted it, she couldn't erase Danielle's calm, unbothered smile. No fear, no flinch. Just confidence. It rattled her. Yes, people had laughed at Danielle. But later, they talked. Not with mockery, but admiration. Some even sounded impressed. Brittany's gut twisted. No way was she letting a random transfer girl flip the school upside down. Tomorrow, she'd make sure everyone remembered who ran Riverdale. By the last bell, her plan was in motion. Chase, Tyler, Monica, Emily, all on board. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was about making sure Danielle never forgot her place. The moment Danielle stepped into the building the next morning, she felt it. The eyes, the whispers. Some curious, some impressed, some pitying. She had seen this before. Different city, same game. But Brittany didn't understand what silence really meant. Danielle was done pretending. When the final bell rang, she walked without hesitation to the back of the gym. where cracked pavement waited beneath a bruised sky. They were already there. Brittany stood at the center like she owned the world, Monica and Emily at her sides. Chase and Tyler lingered behind, their presence heavy, threatening. Danielle's father's words echoed in her mind. You don't start fights, but if they come for you, you finish them, and this time, she wouldn't walk away. The next day, Brittany was ready. She wasn't just looking to make a statement, she was going to end it. For good. By the time the final bell rang, her plan was locked in. Chase, Tyler, Monica, and Emily were fully on board. This wasn't about drama anymore. It was about reminding Danielle exactly where she stood. She would make sure the new girl knew. Being untouchable was just a fantasy. But the moment Danielle stepped into the building that morning, she could feel the shift. The way people looked at her. Curious, excited, even a little sorry. She recognized it all too well. New school, same playbook. She'd spent years dodging these moments, keeping her head down, never giving anyone a reason to see what she was capable of. But Brittany didn't understand silence. She mistook it for weakness. When the final bell rang, Danielle didn't hesitate. She walked out to the back lot behind the gym, where the cracked pavement. By the next morning, the atmosphere at Riverdale High had changed. Eyes followed Danielle not out of curiosity, but uncertainty. Whispers weren't asking who she was. They were wondering what she'd do next. She didn't walk like a girl, trying to blend in anymore. She moved like someone unbothered by their games. But pressure pulsed through the halls. Brittany and her crew weren't done. They needed Danielle to crack. Gym class turned into a stage. Monica and Emily started small. Shoulder bumps, careless shoves. But they wanted more. Tyler watched, his grin growing. The more Danielle held her ground, the more they escalated. They weren't just bullying now. They were daring her to snap. Rumors spread fast. Danielle's dangerous. She's different. Brittany felt it too, a quiet dread she couldn't shake. Danielle wasn't intimidated, and that scared her. Brittany needed to restore control. Today, she'd end it. By lunch, Danielle could feel it, the tension coiling tighter. Monica and Emily's accidental bumps became blatant. Danielle didn't blink. Even during basketball, when Chase Sanders knocked into her repeatedly and Tyler mocked her with every stumble, she stayed composed. Brittany watched, arms folded, eyes narrowed, waiting for Danielle to break, but nothing. And Danielle didn't shrink, didn't rage. She looked bored, not broken. That was the real threat. She wasn't losing. She wasn't even playing, Brittany snapped. The tray shove came fast. Danielle stumbled, food spilling, the cafeteria going deathly still. Laughter exploded. Brittany stepped forward, smirking like the victor. "Oh no," she said, voice soaked in triumph, standing over Danielle like she'd already won. "Oh no." The poor little new girl dropped her lunch, Emily sneered, laughter bubbling up as Monica joined in beside her. Chase leaned against the table, arms folded, wearing a smug grin. Tyler had his phone out, capturing every second while other students followed suit, cameras flashing like it was a red carpet moment. This was it, the breakdown they had waited for. Brittany leaned closer, her voice drenched in mock sympathy. "What's wrong? Gonna cry?" Maybe call your mommy laughter echoed off the cafeteria walls. But Danielle didn't flinch. She stood motionless, fists clenched, her breath calm and measured. For a beat, everything held still. Then slowly, deliberately, she raised her head. A faint smile tugged at her lips, subtle but clear. And Brittany felt it. That shiver that crawled up her spine. Unfamiliar and unwelcome. A new girl walks into Riverdale High with one goal: blend in and get out. But in a school ruled by whispers and stereotypes, that's easier said than done. The brakes of the yellow school bus let out a sharp hiss as it pulled up to Riverdale High, its doors groaning open into the thick, sticky Georgia air. Students poured out in chattering clusters, laughing, bumping shoulders, and jostling like it was muscle memory. No one noticed the girl who stepped off last. Danielle Walker tugged at the frayed strap of her backpack, her sharp gaze scanning the towering red brick school ahead. It mirrored Houston, her old life, down to the crowded halls, noisy cliques, and survival code. Stay quiet, stay invisible, stay out of trouble. She wasn't looking to make friends or stir drama. Her mission was simple: finish senior year, get that diploma, and disappear. Blending in had always been her armor. But today, the second she crossed the threshold of Riverdale High, something shifted. Eyes followed. Voices dipped to hushed murmurs. This time, the stares weren't just curious. They were loaded. Danielle wasn't just new. She was the only black girl in a sea of sameness. Their looks weren't questions. They were judgments. Would she be loud? Angry? A stereotype waiting to happen. Danielle kept her head up, navigating the hallway toward her locker until she saw her. Brittany Sanders. The name had already rippled through the bus, cloaked in awe and quiet warning. Tall, blonde, and effortlessly powerful. Brittany didn't rule through fear. Her presence alone set the tone. Lauren Mitchell and Emily Cooper orbited her like moons. Not far off, arms crossed, stood Chase Sanders, Brittany's brother, the school's golden boy, and Tyler Grant, the loudmouth with a smirk built for chaos. Danielle didn't need introductions. She knew their kind all too well. And she could feel their eyes sizing her up before a single word was spoken. Chase stood tall, cocky smile in place, as Tyler's restless energy buzzed beside him. Danielle had seen their type in every school, the ones who thought their names were crowns. But she wasn't here to play their game. Danielle turned to her locker, face composed as her fingers spun the dial on the combination lock. Her movements were steady, her posture relaxed. No chance she'd give them a show. The first class passed without incident, though the whispers buzzed on like a swarm. "She's from Houston." "Bet she's tough," someone muttered as she passed. Danielle didn't flinch. Let them speculate. She wasn't here to squeeze into their boxes. At lunch, she picked a quiet corner in the cafeteria. Alone, she ate in silence, surrounded by the chatter and laughter of others, but kept her eyes down, focused. Then the energy shifted. The laughter sharpened. It was aimed. She felt them before she heard them. Well, look at this." Brittany's voice rang out, sweet and soaked in mockery. Danielle didn't flinch. She calmly sipped her juice. "Oh, is the new girl shy?" Lauren Mitchell sneered. "I think she's just stuck up," Emily Cooper added, her tone laced with disdain. The cafeteria leaned in. The show had started. Danielle stayed quiet, chewing slowly, not playing into their hands. Then Tyler piped up. "Maybe she doesn't speak English." His grin sly and loud. Ryan joined in, voice low and cruel. "Or maybe she's just slow." Brittany stood at the center, watching, waiting. She needed a reaction. Danielle's silence was too steady. Without warning, Brittany knocked Danielle's juice over, drenching her tray. The room froze. Danielle exhaled, set down her fork, wiped her hand, and rose. Without looking at Brittany or her followers, she dumped her tray and walked away. Then she laughed. Soft, barely there, but enough. The laughter that followed was uneasy. Brittany felt it too. Danielle glanced back once. In her gaze, there wasn't fear or fury. There was something colder, quiet, calculated, and for the first time, Brittany didn't feel in control. She felt unsure.